Hey class, in this recording we are going to focus on the lower limb. So we have a couple bones here with femur, patella, tibia, fibula, and then bones of the foot. The femur has the most going on with it, so we're going to spend a lot of time focusing on our femur. So I have pre-cleaned up here invisible body. I have just the legs, and let's focus on the femur. So I'll go ahead and double click on the femur here, zoom in on one of our femurs, the right femur. The femur is notable in that it is the longest long bone of the human body. And while we're looking at the femur, it has some large bony protrusions coming off of it. It has some of them are rough, like the greater and lesser trochanter. Some of them are smooth, like the head. Let's go ahead and zoom in on the femur for a more detailed view of the femur. So as we're looking at the femur here, we have kind of I think this is chartreuse, don't quote me on that, or periwinkle, this kind of like purplish gray color right here, lavender gray color. That is the head of the femur. And then as we look at the head of the femur, there's a small indentation in the head of the femur. That is called the Fovea Capitus. The Fovea Capitus is not very visible here in visible body, and that's kind of ironic. But as we look at the Fovea Capitus, is this indentation that is the connection point of the ligamentum teres, the ligament that serves to anchor the head of the femur into the acetabulum of the pelvic girdle. And then we have greater and lesser trochanters. As we look at the greater and lesser actually, I'm going to skip ahead to the neck of the femur. Right here in purple, connecting the head to the main body of the femur, we have the neck of the femur in purple. And then over here, kind of in this light salmon color, light pink color, we have the greater trochanter. And then the smaller rough bump right here, highlighted, is the lesser trochanter. The greater and lesser trochanters serve as attachment points for the major muscles of the thigh and buttocks. And because those are big muscles, they exert a lot of force on the bone, and we need to have big connection points. Next, we have some condyles and epicondyles. And these condyles and epicondyles are going to be on the distal end. So we'll zoom out and shift from the proximal end of the femur all the way down here to the distal end of the femur. And while we're looking at this distal end of the femur, it's important to know medial versus lateral. The head of the femur is always going to be medial. So in blue, recall your generic bone terminology. A condyle is a smooth extension of a bone that's in a joint. So right here in blue and red, we have condyles. The one in blue is towards the medial side. We call it the medial condyle. By the process of elimination, the one in the reds is the lateral condyle of the femur. And then we have the epicondyles. Epi means above. Think of the epidermis of the skin being directly above the dermis. So here, kind of in this olive green gray color, we have an epicondyle. And then over here we have another extension. That's another epicondyle. And then we need to determine medial versus lateral again. So let's get our frame of reference. There's the head of the femur. So in green right here, we have the medial epicondyle, and then in that olive gray green color right there, we have the lateral epicondyle. And then in between the condyles, and this name is great, intercondylar fossa. Inter meaning in between the condyles, and fossa meaning a smooth indentation. So as I look at this over here, there is a smooth indentation in between the condyles back here. That is our intercondylar fossa in between those two condyles. And then finally we have the patellar surface. The patellar surface is where the kneecap or patella sits against the condyle, and it's shown here in orange. That is our patellar surface of the femur. So those are the main parts of the femur. Let's move on to the bones of the lower. Well, actually, let's first cover the patella. Here's the patella, aka the kneecap. There's not much to say about the patella. There it is. We also have the tibia and fibula. And as we look at the tibia and fibula, I want to emphasize that the tibia is the main weight-bearing bone of the lower leg. The fibula is more of a stabilizer. I've had students in the past ask me, can you walk with a broken leg? And the answer is yes, you can, as long as you've broken the fibula and not the tibia. If you break the tibia, you're toast. Can't walk on a broken tibia. If you break the fibula, it's a very mild fracture of the fibula. It is possible to walk on your broken fibula, but it's not going to be a pleasant experience. But let's talk about the tibia first. So we have the tibia, we have some condyles, some tuberosities. Let's dive into it. First, we'll do our zoomed in view. As we're looking at the tibia, the one that really jumps out at me right now is this gray patch. This is the tibial tuberosity. This is where the patellar tendon attaches, right there at the tibial tuberosity. We also have some condyles of the tibia. Those condyles are right here on the surface. We have a medial condyle and a lateral condyle. And to differentiate medial and lateral on a disarticulated tibia, you need to look, I always look at the distal end. And you can see this styloid process right there. Excuse me, the medial malleolus, not styloid process. Styloid process, that's for the upper limbs. For the lower limbs, it's the malleolus. So we have a malleolus right there. And that malleolus on the tibia is always going to be on the medial side. So there's our medial malleolus, which means up here, this articulation point is going to be the medial condyle, and over here is the lateral condyle. Now, a common question I get from students at this point is, hey, Mr. Durst, I thought condyles were smooth extensions of bones associated with joints. These condyles on the tibia kind of look like indentations, not smooth extensions. And for those of you who are wondering about that, I'm going to say, you're very observant. Unfortunately, there are some exceptions to the names, but to give you an idea of how we can call those smooth extensions of the joint, I'm going to go ahead and add the meniscus back in. So we'll add our ligaments here and cartilages. I'll just go ahead and remove. Those, and now you can see those menisci. So the menisci are supposed to take the place of the fossa. The menisci are the big indentations. Think of the menisci as the indentations. And then condyles go into those indentations. So we have condyles of the femur and then condyles of the tibia that extend into the menisci. So that's why they're called condyles. Even though on the tibia, they kind of look like indentations as opposed to extensions. And by kinda, I mean absolutely look like indentations to me. So, what's that old phrase? The exception makes the rule. Here's one of the exceptions to the condyle nomenclature. And that is the tibia. Let's move on to the fibula. As we look at our fibula, first I want you to know that, hey, just recognize it's a fibula. And then, as we're looking at the fibula in detail, the head of the fibula is proximal, and it's going to be the widest end of the fibula. And then the narrow end of the fibula is distal, and that's going to be the lateral malleolus. So as we look at the malleoli, the medial and lateral malleoli, we have the medial malleolus associated with the tibia, right here at the tip of my pointer. The lateral malleolus is associated with the fibula, and right now is at the tip of my pointer. So if you palpate your ankle, the medial and lateral malleolus are the bumps on the left or on the inside and outside, medial and lateral margins of your ankle. Oftentimes referred to by people as the ankle bones, even though they're actually part of the lower leg bones. Speaking of ankle bones, let's talk about the tarsals. We'll move on to the foot. So we have a foot here. And let's get rid of the left leg. We'll just clean this up. No more left limb. Okay, so here we have some tarsals. Tarsals, to highlight all the tarsals for us, are shown right here. We do not want you to know all the tarsals. We'll save that for those of you who have to go into a physical therapy or occupational therapy program. Right now, we'll just focus on the fact that all those small bones grouped together are tarsals, but there are two tarsals we are going to have you commit to memory. Those two tarsals that we want you to commit to memory are the talus and the calcaneus. As we look at the talus, this is the tarsal bone that is going to directly articulate with the tibia and fibula. And then as we look at the calcaneus, it's oftentimes referred to as the heel bone. And that is going to be that's the largest tarsal of our foot. So we have talus and calcaneus. And then we're going to have the metatarsals. So in the hand we had carpals and metacarpals. In the foot we have tarsals and metatarsals. The metatarsals are right here. I'll go ahead and select all the metatarsals for us. So there's all 5 metatarsals, and we're going to number them just like we did with the metacarpals of the hand. So left to right, we need to say left or right, and then we need to use a Roman numeral to let us know which one we're talking about. The Roman numeral starts with number 1 on the big toe and ends with number 5 on your little toe or pinky toe. So as we're looking at these, we have, this is on the right foot, so I'd say right metatarsal number 1. Right metatarsal 1. Over here, we have right metatarsal 5. Right here, we have right metatarsal number 3. And then we also have the phalanges of the foot. Phalanges refer to bones as a plural for bones of the fingers and toes. The singular of a phalange is a phalanx, and that's just an awkward word for me to say. So as we're looking at these phalanges, right here, the tip of the big toe, the distal end of the big toe, would be the right distal phalanx number 1. Right here, I zoomed in too much. I want to emphasize again, the big toe has only has a proximal and distal phalanx, but the other toes have a proximal, distal, and middle. And I want to emphasize again, middle, not medial. Middle means in between two structures. Medial means towards the midline of the body. So right here, we have the right middle phalanx number 4 on our foot. And we're going to be stickler about this. We want to be consistent with our lab manual. Yes, Visible Body uses a slightly different nomenclature system, but we're going to go with the lab manual one because it's a little bit more technical, and if you can get that one down, you're golden. You'll understand everything else that you see in the literature. So hey, that's all we have on the lower limb class. If you have any questions or comments about this video, please feel free to post them in the class discussion board or to shoot me an email. And as always, happy studies.